Minister, Excellencies, it's a pleasure to be here and represent TK Corporation. We have a lot of businesses here, especially on the offshore side in Stavanger and Trondheim, so it's a pleasure to address you today. What's next? I think that's a great question. We spend a lot of time at TK talking about it. But before we talk about what's next, we always figure out which way we're going. Our founder, Torben Karlshøj, started this company with less than $100,000. And today, when you put together the market capitalization of all our companies, it's $6 billion. So how did Torben do it? Torben started it in chartering ships, regional Afromax type of operation in the Pacific, combining lots. And then he moved into asset ownership. So it was a classic commodity play. But recently, we've moved into niches, and I think that's important when you think about what's next. So we have now moved about 10% of the world's seaborne oil, a lot of shuttle tankers. We move over 4 million barrels of oil a day, mostly short sea. And from there, we moved into shuttle tankers. From there, we moved into LNG, where we weren't there even 7 years ago. And then we finally moved into FPSOs with our acquisition of Petrojarl in Trondheim. But what underpins it for all of us at TK is the fact that we're fully integrated. A lot of people insist on the idea that it's a commodity business, you can move and you can have outsourcing, technical operations, commercial operations. At TK, we believe you can only come up with customer solutions and answer the what's next question if you're willing to have everything in-house and have a task force that can come together and meet the solutions of tomorrow. So today, from our conventional tanker side, we still are the largest operator of mid-sized conventional tankers, but we've changed the way we do business. Rather than own everything today, we have a lot of very good partners that we operate together with pools. So with Frontline, Nordic American Tankers, we are today the leading Suezmax tanker pool operator. And then in LNGs, we again have taken our cash flow that we've taken off of our commodity conventional tankers, and we move into niche businesses. But what a lot of people don't understand is that we actually listen to our customers. Our customers told us, we love your operating brand in tankers, move into LNG carriers. We love what you're doing in conventional tankers, move into shuttle tankers. And so in each case, we said, can we take that next step going forward? And then finally, we were picking up the oil from the FPSOs, and we said we can be in FPSOs. And today, we try to be the market leader, but that isn't our sole aspiration. The aspiration is to be sustainable by making money enough that we can reinvest in our businesses. I think what's important about shipping is when you become involved in shipping, generally, if you make $1 out of shipping, you're going to put 75 cents or another dollar back into shipping. And that's what I've always loved about this business. But let's talk about this business, because I believe in the next 10 years, we're going to see new disruptive technologies that are going to make our business much different from the way we used to do business in the old days. I was a banker for 20 years before I came to TK about 10 years ago. And we always took great comfort that we could lend money because the technology didn't change. All that really happened was, as this slide says, things got bigger. We supersized it. We McMansioned it, as we would say in the United States. And therefore, as ports got bigger and as we didn't have the draft restrictions, you could get that kind of savings going forward. But when we built these kind of ships, we didn't build them to be fuel efficient. We didn't build them necessarily to be power consumption friendly. And we didn't build them with the idea that we had to save money on greenhouse gases. And all of these things are new ideas which have come, and in the future, we're going to have to take these into account. So let me give you an example of that. Here, we're showing what happens in the Afromax market. And if you think about this over time, this is how much money we make per day. The blue line is how much we make on a time charter rate. And you will, of course, see that we had a lot of boom years reaching up into the 08, 09 financial crisis. But the red line is the more interesting line. That's the cost of fuel, measured in dollars per day. And a lot of people don't realize this, but today, if we receive $1 from the oil company, Our charterer, 75 cents goes into the fuel tank. Just stop and think about that. That means that from the old days where we were getting 75 cents and putting 25 cents in the gas tank, it's totally switched. So what does that tell you? That tells you that if we can save money on the bunker side, it directly affects our profits. It also tells you that that's where people have to focus. In the old days, ship owners said, operating is something terrible I do between buying and selling a ship. That's commodities. Now we're moving into optimization. So people talked about operating costs, meaning manning, but now we spend much more time talking about voyage costs. Why? Because voyage costs are 75 cents of every dollar we're making right now, or rather we're getting as revenue on the Afromax side. So these high bunker prices are going to change the way we think about shipping and change the propulsion technology and change it. So a lot of people want to approach this from the idea that we need sustainable businesses from greenhouse gases. But we believe in a green ship that makes money, because only then will we be a sustainable business. So at TK, how did we respond to the financial crisis? We actually went back and said, let's think about this from a scenario planning standpoint. So we spent a lot of time with a lot of people internally as well as externally, and we said, what are the two major things that are going to determine the world? And what we came up with was, what was going to be the oil market? Was it going to be a high volume or was it going to be low volume? Were we going to have peak oil? And when I think about peak oil, I don't just think about peak supply, I think about peak demand, because we've already seen demand destruction over the last 4 or 5 months. And then we thought about politically driven. Is it going to be wide open as it's been from World War II, so economically driven, or is it going to be politically driven? And if you just think about the internet, which everyone thinks is wide open, it is today getting gatekeeping, whether you're in an Apple world, a Google world. And we said, what kind of scenarios would we have? Would we have an industry in which you wouldn't have the free flow of ships? You would have different networks being built up, whether it was US-centric, China-centric? Would we be in an area where we would be green grass, where we would find a way out of the oil side, but at the same time, you would have economically driven decisions? Or would we just be in a low-growth, low-oil world? Of course, we also thought about the good part, full throttle, where the world booms, the developing world goes forward, the oil demand comes back into the developed world. And so in each case, we came up with strategies, and more importantly, we came up with technologies that would fit each one of these frameworks. And we also thought that these frameworks wouldn't exist all at one time. So when we think about the future, is this the future? Is the future that we're just going to be more consumption friendly? We think we have to think about greenhouse gas emissions, but also about making money. So I wanted to get a little bit more specific when we think about what the future is. And I've split it up into 3 groups. So the first thing is what we're already doing today. We're putting on propeller boss cap fins. We're selling, saving 2 to 5% in terms of the bunker consumption. We're changing around our routing systems. And we are changing just like the airlines did. When I went by LaGuardia Airport the other day, I looked at the terminal that US Air built. And it was built for 737s and 727s. But guess what's operating there now? Much more fuel-efficient commuter planes. And where are those 737s and 727s? They are sitting in the desert. Why is that? Because the fuel cost that we see going forward is going to be much more than the capital investment. Just think about that. The amount you spend on fuel is going to be more than what you spent in terms of acquiring it. Or think about it from your car's point of view. If you spend $30,000 on a car, you're going to spend over $100,000 on the fuel for that car. That's what we're looking at right now in terms of shipping. So what are we doing? We're tank testing new designs, and obviously the kind of ships you made were made for worldwide trading. But in the future, we think it'll come into more niche trades, similarly that you just saw in the award that was given to the large China Max-sized bulk carrier, specifically designed for future trades. That also works with the idea that you have not as much fuel trade, but dedicated trade routes. And so ship owners, independent ship owners, are going to have to respond to that. If we think about offshore, there it's much more a question of power consumption. Here in the North Sea, we load our ships in terms of bow loading, and that's been a tried and true area. But think of the energy that's wasted with our dynamic positioning, holding ships off, using tugs to hold ships off and dynamic positioning. We have a new idea, which is to load it from the stern, what we call our flex shuttle. It would save a lot in terms of power consumption, much more friendly in terms of greenhouse gases. Similarly, we have to go outside of TK. Although we're integrated, we now work with Halliburton on well stimulation, and then, of course, we've moved into the FPSO. So I see much more growth in these niche areas, and especially as it relates to offshore development. And then finally, gas. It's no secret that the gas area has been the biggest change. For about 30 years, there was no change. Steam generation, now we're dual-fuel diesel-electric, save at least $20,000 a day. And more, we're going to see these floating storage regas units. We're going to see floating LNG terminals, and these are niche trades. So we're not the only company doing this, but what I think typifies what the industry has going forward is this niche-driven, build-to-suit business as it looks at that. So the future, I'm optimistic. I think it's a great opportunity. My favorite saying around TK is never a crisis, merely an opportunity. Thank you very much.